Within Season 2 of Foundation, we've seen a lot of focus being put upon the individuals that are on the planet Ignis, the group called Mentalics. As the episodes have been going on, we've learned more and more about them, and the powers that they hold and the threat that could be heading their way in the near future, with many of them expressing themselves in completely different ways, such as Tellem, Josiah, Thalis, and Loron. I thought I'd break down the Mentalics and explain all that there is to know about them, along with touching on that strong theory that's centered around Josiah being the mule. So let's get into it. Here is Foundation Season 2, The Mentalics Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Who are the Mentalics? The Mentalics are a group of individuals that hold a certain set of abilities and powers, and they inhabit Ignis under the ruling of Tellem. The Mentalics were individuals that were once persecuted on their home planets from all over the galaxy and treated like monsters, and were facing death sentences because of the abilities that they held and the fact that they were extremely different to the people that they were around. People viewed them as gods and also as monsters. We know that there are many more individuals that hold mentalic abilities that are out there on other planets and are most likely facing the wrath of the rulers and citizens on their home planets. But Tellem and many of her followers can hear the struggles of the Mentalics, and they go along with her in order to rescue them. Or if they're out in open space, then she can essentially put out a calling which will alert a Mentalic, and they'll naturally get some kind of pull towards Ignis, alerting them that it's okay to be there. This was exactly what we saw happen with Gaal, Salvor, and Seldon. They heard the calling and ended up being drawn to Ignis. Well, Gaal and Salvor did. Abilities and powers. The Mentalics' abilities are extremely powerful. They're able to read the minds of others around them, and they're also able to manipulate somebody's mind when they're targeting them. For example, they can hone in on a memory and alter the reality of the individual, making them believe that they're seeing the person that lies deep within their mind. Like what we saw with Salvor, and also with Hari Seldon when he saw Raish. Mentalics barely utter a word to one another, and it's often completely silent when they're together. Instead, they're able to utilize an ability called unvoicing, which means that they're able to communicate with one another inside of their own minds. A way which allows them to communicate in a safer way, which means that the people around them that aren't Mentalics won't know what they're talking about. The more powerful Mentalics like Tellem are able to enter an individual's mind and view it as a physical space, such as when she entered Gaal's mind and they were back on Synax, and it was almost as if this space was formed around her. Plus, they can also think outwards. So for example, when Gaal had her vision in the future with the mule, and when she was harmed by him when he had his hands around her, in the present time period when she awoke, the marks were actually on her. This was because she was thinking outwards. It's also the same as when she left her mind when Tellem entered it and she was covered in water. As well as unvoicing, they also have the ability to play back memories to the people that they want to project them to. For example, we saw Josiah do that to Salvor when it was just the both of them that were on the beach, and he also showed her how Tellem came to rescue him. Along with that, we also saw many of the other Mentalics on Ignis doing it to Salvor as well when she was walking through the area. So the ability to display parts of history is something that is extremely impressive and powerful, as it paints an extremely clear picture. One other power that they emit is that they can essentially manipulate the space around them and generate some kind of force that can be used against somebody. One other ability that we found out about in the most recent episode was the fact that they can feel the pain of anything that is around them. Empathy is one of the biggest traits of the Mentalics, and when suffering is present, it's something that they understand and can truly feel. This may be something that's very prominent because suffering is something that has been at the core of the Mentalics for their entire existence. So understanding it is something that they've always been able to do, most likely because of what they experienced off of Ignis as well. The final ability that they have, which we know of so far, is that they're able to take over the minds of the subject that they're targeting, and they can render them into a state of unconsciousness, or they can prevent them from even moving, allowing them to have total control over the individual. We saw Tellem express this power when she was with Gaal inside of the beggar, and also with Salvor right at the end of episode 7 when she was frozen on the spot and rendered unconscious. So Mentalics do have a wide array of abilities, and we're only really just getting started in seeing how they're being used. We've seen them getting used on a more personal level between Tellem and Seldon, but I think it's going to be good if there is an all-out battle that ends up taking place, and we see them in full force. Who could be the mule? Well, there are a few different theories that are floating around surrounding the identity of the mule. One major one that's going around at the moment is about Josiah potentially being the mule. Considering he's a side character at the moment, he's had a really strong involvement when it's come to communicating with Salvor, and every time that he's spoken, it's held some kind of importance and developed the story forward. We know that the mule is an individual that's set to arrive and cause the mass devastation that we saw in Gaal's vision in around 150 years' time. When we look at Josiah in terms of appearance of the both of them, there's definitely a possibility that when he gets older, he could take on the form of the mule. When they were all sitting around and Gaal was telling the story of what she saw in her vision, when she mentioned how the mule was a conqueror and was an outlier, Josiah was sitting there next to her, and I can't help but feel that there's going to be some importance of Josiah and the mule. There was a large focus on him during that speech. There was a moment in the previous episode where he told Salvor how Tellem saved himself and saved everybody, almost viewing her as their savior. So if something were to happen to Tellem at the hands of Salvor or Gaal, what's to say that it doesn't trigger him to go in a completely different direction to the new agenda that's going to be getting implemented, especially when it comes to the setting up of another foundation at the expense of the Mentalics. He's been extremely involved as a side character, and I feel there's definitely a strong possibility that it could be him. There's also a theory about Tellem potentially being the mule, and whilst I'm not 100% convinced on the fact that she could be, there is always a possibility. If Tellem ends up being cast out due to Gaal becoming the new leader, and Gaal not being able to look past what she did to Seldon and Salvor, we could see Tellem have motive there for being against Gaal. We were told that she was on the verge of death and was going to be dying soon, but that could just be something that she mentioned with no truth behind it. We know that she is sneaky and has alternative plans, as we saw with Seldon, so there's nothing to say that she couldn't have lied about that. We also know that Mentalics can appear as different individuals, so whilst the mule looked the way that he did in the vision, Tellem could just be presenting herself with different characteristics. The Mentalics, or Sighted as Tellem prefers to be known as, are a group of characters that I'm glad we've been introduced to. Even though there is a lot of mystery that surrounds them as we're drawing closer to the season finale, I don't think we'll see their true strength or value in this season. I think the introduction of the Mentalics is going to be something that will come to be more important as the entire show continues developing forwards. Tellem is an extremely interesting individual, and personally, I think her time is limited in the show. The dictatorship that she's running is something that I think many people will start to see through, especially with the way that she got rid of Seldon and the fact that she harmed Salvor, a person with mentalic abilities. So that could well go against her, considering that she has the viewpoints as a savior at the moment, and that goes against who she is. With Gaal already being suspicious of her, and I think after what happened in the beggar with the slight tension that was there, Tellem will eventually be put in her place. I'm looking forward to learning more about the Mentalics as time goes on. So, there you have it. Foundation Season 2, The Mentalics Explained. What do you think of the Mentalics? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.